I'm Chris Heinonen from Reference Home Theater, and in this review, we're going to talk about the long-awaited flagship soundbar update from Sonos, the new Sonos Arc. As a longtime Sonos Playbar user, I was very excited when they announced the new Sonos Arc soundbar earlier this year. It has a number of improvements that I've been waiting for. It has an HDMI input to use HDMI eARC, as well as allow for HDMI CEC control from your TV. It supports Airplay, so you can easily send audio from your iPhone or your other Apple devices around the house. And it has a sleeker, more elegant design that looks better than the boxy setup of the Playbar. As soon as it was available to order, I went ahead and got one, and have been testing it in my house for a number of weeks now. Now that I've had a chance to listen to movies and music, I can talk about how it's been performing for me. Not only does the ARC support HDMI eARC, but it also supports the newer eARC format, which allows it to play back lossless audio, including Dolby Atmos. It has Airplay 2 support for easy playback from Apple devices, and it has integrated voice assistants, including Google and Amazon. But it still keeps the original ease of use of the Playbar, which is one of the biggest benefits. The Sonos Arc is slightly smaller than the Playbar and looks better with rounded edges compared to the boxy design of the Playbar. The controls on top of the Arc match those of other recent Sonos speakers, letting you play and pause the music, skip tracks, and adjust volume through a combination of button presses and swipes. It might sound a bit confusing, but once you've done the controls once, they're very intuitive and easy to use. You can get the Sonos Arc in a black or white finish, and I went with a basic black. Setup of the Arc is very simple, as you only need to connect the HDMI port to the HDMI eARC port on your TV, and then make sure that HDMI CEC is enabled on your TV. Sonos will quickly set up the Arc, connect it to your network, and then prompt you to run TruePlay. TruePlay is Sonos' room correction technology, and it might be more important here than with any speaker they have made in the past. With 9 individual drivers, including left, right, center, 2 surround, and 2 Atmos channels, the Arc is likely to have a lot of interactions with your room. Running TruePlay only takes a few minutes, and it optimizes the sound for how your individual room is set up. The surround channels are going to work very differently depending on how close the sidewalls in your room are, and Atmos will interact differently depending on how your ceiling is. With a perfectly designed room with close sidewalls and a normal flat ceiling, the Arc won't need as much help, but in something like an open living room, these adjustments make a far better listening experience. I did my initial testing of the Sonos Arc in my home theater room, which is 11 feet by 13 feet with a normal 8-foot ceiling. After I calibrated the room with TruePlay, I listened to some Dolby Atmos demo content from a Dolby Blu-ray disc. Watching these demo clips, which are designed specifically to showcase Atmos, the Arc gave the experience of something moving across the soundstage with the surrounds, but the height channels weren't as effective. It sounded like sound was coming above the TV rather than overhead, so it couldn't recreate the experience of an Atmos theater with dedicated in-ceiling speakers. When the thunder rumbled, there was okay bass, but it definitely made me want to add the Sonos sub to the system. But my main home theater room already has a 5.1.4 Atmos system in it, so the Arc was meant for the living room, where I paired it with a 75-inch TCL 825 mini LED TV. This doesn't currently support eARC, but TCL has said that might come later in 2020 with a firmware update. Here, the audio from the TV was restricted to lossy Dolby Digital Plus. My living room is much more open, with a wall around 8 feet to the right of the Arc and the other wall closer to 20 feet away. Because of this, the surround effect was not as good in this room as it was in the theater room. I lost lots of the side-to-side effects in these Dolby Atmos demo clips, and the height channel was almost entirely absent. The living room ceiling is also 2 stories high and angled, so I expected the Atmos effects to fail, but it was almost completely absent when compared to the theater room. While it didn't fare as well in the living room as it did in the theater room, the Arc was still a substantial upgrade over the speakers that are built into the TV. Vocals were much easier to understand, especially at night with lower volume levels. The soundtracks from action movies were much more dynamic and immersive than they were without the Arc, even if I know it would have been better in a more standard-shaped room. By default, Sonos enables the loudness setting in their EQ, which will boost the low end and high frequencies a bit at lower volumes, but I found it made the overall listening experience too bass-heavy. Listening to the Dave Matthews Live Blu-ray disc, it handled the high-resolution soundtrack very well and sounded clear and detailed. It even interested my kids who had never heard Dave Matthews or Tim Reynolds before, but wanted to come see who was playing guitar. 2-channel music sounds very good through the Arc, with reasonably good stereo separation and a decent amount of bass. It isn't as wide as with a pair of bookshelf speakers, but for playing music when not listening to movies or watching TV, it does a great job. Listening to Radiohead's OK Computer, it recreated the ambiance of the recording environment well and didn't sound thin or harsh. Turning TruePlay on and off while listening shows how big of a difference it makes, with the soundstage width and bass response falling off noticeably when you disable it. It's also nice that when you start watching TV after listening to music, the ARC automatically switches over to the TV without you needing to do anything. I do wish that Sonos would show more details about what you are listening to in the Sonos app. Both TVs I tested with the ARC would report that I was listening to Dolby Atmos, but never if I was listening to lossless Atmos over enhanced ARC or just lossy Atmos over standard ARC. The ARC can stream audio tracks up to 2448 resolution, but 2496 and 24192 resolutions remain unsupported. Sonos also doesn't currently support multi-channel PCM audio with the ARC, but it has said they will add support for it. For users of the Apple TV or the Nintendo Switch, which send audio in this format, you'll have to wait a bit to get surround sound from the ARC. As I mentioned at the start, I've already bought the Sonos Arc for my living room, but all things considered, after using it for a few weeks, would I buy it again? Yes. What I wanted was great quality sound to go with the great image we already had in our living room, and I wanted it to be easy to use and set up, and that nobody needed to use another remote. The downsides that I mentioned, where the surround sound and the Atmos effects weren't as great in the living room as in a dedicated home theater, well, that's something you can't fix unless you want to have dedicated speakers in the ceiling or in the walls. For most people, the Sonos Arc is going to be a fantastic solution to getting great quality audio to match the video from your display. I'd highly recommend going out and taking a listen to it to see if it works for you. If you've enjoyed this review, please make sure to like and subscribe below to be notified of future reviews from us. Thank you for watching.